It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Well, good morning, Stuart, and a happy Wednesday. Glad you're all tuning back in, and we have a couple good shows on tap. The first half of the program is going to be very interesting because, as you know, everything happens in Tallahassee during session, and there has been a lot this past year. And Supervisor of Elections, Vicki Davis, is here in the studio to talk about some of the legislation that was passed and may impact some of the future elections and what you need to know. So, Vicki, it's good to see you. You have been here many times. I love having you in the studio.
Well, I appreciate the ability to be here and to share information with voters. And I just want to thank you, Casey, because you are always so open for me to share information
Absolutely.
And keep voters up to date with what's going on, and with legislative session having ended and a big reform bill having passed. Our voters need to be aware of what's going to be expected of them in the next election cycle.
Just to hear about. And Vicki, my door is always open to you. It's so important that people exercise their right to vote.
Absolutely.
So, over the last few years, especially with the last election, people have been concerned about election integrity.
Absolutely.
Are our votes, are they being counted? Are there too many being counted? Not enough? Are they being changed? I mean, people have a lot of questions. So
yes.
Certainly I know a lot of states around the nation were trying to address voter integrity. Florida has been at the forefront of most of these issues all the way through this pandemic and the elections. So.
Yeah, and thank goodness, in 2020, Florida really was the shining star for the nation. And that's really a great thing for the state of Florida because of the reputation we've had since 2000. And we've really, really worked hard, election officials have, in the state of Florida to make sure that our staff are professionals, that our position and the job that we do is looked at as professional, that we are transparent, that we do conduct secure elections, that we're educated, we continually offer staff development courses for our staff.
Yes.
We want them certified, as much as possible. So we've really, really worked hard and worked with the legislature, too, in order to put laws in place to facilitate the process.
Absolutely. And you talked about 2000. Of course, that was the year of the hanging chads. And you are absolutely right. Florida has been on the forefront for the wrong reasons for many years.
Yes.
Excluding Martin County, might I say. So it was really something this past election where Florida was the shining example of how an election should be ran.
Yes.
Quick elections. Nobody questioned the integrity of our elections. So it was wonderful. So Vicki, let's cut into the meat of today. And that is what changes occurred in the legislation in Tallahassee here this past session.
Yeah. Senate Bill 90 was passed. It was signed off by the governor on May the 6th. And as soon as it was signed by the governor, it became effective in law.
Okay.
So there are really a few areas that affect our voters. I have the bill here in front of me. It's a 48-page bill.
Oh, my.
Which is
short. Yes,
really,
short in many standards.
It's not that, it's not that long compared to one that's at the federal level that's 900 pages.
That's right.
But voters need to really be aware that they're going to have to verify additional personal information when they're requesting a vote by mail ballot.
Okay.
So in the past, when we have mailed out a voter information card to our voters, we've included a request form asking for their information, what elections they wanted to vote by mail in. They would have to include their signature, their date of birth, especially if we were mailing the ballot to an address other than what we have of record.
Okay.
And that's still current in law.
Okay.
What the change is now, a voter, when they're requesting to vote by mail, has to also provide to us their Florida driver's license or a Florida ID number if they don't have a license, or the last 4 digits of their social security number. So because of that change, we now are just including something very generic.
Okay.
Asking our voters to either call the office or go out to our website.
Okay.
And sign up on the website. That's really probably the best avenue other than calling the office. If we don't have that new required information, such as their driver's license number or their last 4 digits of their social security number, and we do have about 4,000 of those voters in the system out of 120,000.
Okay.
I'm one of them.
Okay. Isn't that something?
Because I registered to vote back in the early 70s,
Okay.
and it wasn't required.
Yes.
So for those voters who registered when that information was not required in our database, they're going to have to provide it now on an application form or going out to the state website at registertovoteflorida.gov.
Okay. This seems very obvious to me, a wonderful idea. I mean, you just prove who you are. Really, that's all it comes down to. Prove who you are, prove you're a citizen, prove you have the right to vote. So those seem like really good changes to me, and I'm glad to hear them myself. So people, how can they contact your office right now and say, am I up to date already?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other change, too, was in the past, a voter could request to vote by mail for 2 election cycles.
Okay.
So if they requested in 2020, a large majority of our voters also requested to vote through the 2022 elections as well.
Okay.
So they're grandfathered in.
Okay.
If they requested through 2022.
Okay.
But moving forward, voters are going to have to request every election cycle. So that's another change.
That's a big change, but again, one that makes sense to me because anything can happen. And we all know every day is a blessed day, and we're lucky to be here. You never know. So going 2 years in advance, you have ballots floating out there that the person may not be able to vote. So that seems like a common sense piece of legislation as well. Any other big pieces of legislation that was happening here in Tallahassee?
Ballot drop boxes, time is limited. That doesn't really affect us that much in Martin County, other than we would have a sign out at our mail slot saying that ballots off after hours.
Okay.
At our mail slot.
All right.
But now it's only during early voting that a voter can drop off a voted ballot.
Only during, okay.
At early voting office hours.
Okay.
Or early voting hours.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go back. We've talked about this before, but let's let the listeners know the process of what happens when there is early voting. Are you tabulating those votes? Does the internal office know the tabulation of those votes and how the outcome is coming for each candidate?
No, we don't. We can't. Not just early votes, but for voting by mail. We don't start that process. We can start the process of tabulating votes right after our LNA, our public testing of the equipment. We don't start that soon in Martin County tabulating. We're like a week out before Election Day.
Okay.
And we can't know. I don't want to know.
Right.
Who's leading and what race. So we have no idea with who's voting by mail, how they're voting, or early votes until we push that button 7 p.m. on election night.
So when not an early vote comes in, but a vote by mail comes in, what happens to that ballot?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And I'm really wanting to offer our voters to come in, take a tour of the office, see for themselves the process, what we do. But when a ballot is received, it goes into the vault. We have a real vault in our office.
All right.
Because our building was built back in the 50s.
Okay.
And it was originally built as the post office when they moved out of the arcade downtown.
So there really is a vault in there already.
It's a real vault, yes. So the ballots go in the vault, and what we're required to do by statute is to verify that signature on that certificate that's on that ballot envelope.
Okay.
So staff, myself, chief deputy, we're verifying those signatures. Staff is instructed if they feel that a signature does not match, they don't reject it. It comes to my chief deputy or myself. We review it and make that determination prior to it going to the canvassing board.
Okay. And if you feel the signature is not a match, what happens?
Then it goes to the canvassing board.
Okay.
It's pulled out of those that are going to be opened and run through the tabulator.
And you do that the day of the election?
No, we start that tabulation process the week before.
The week before, okay.
Yes. But the canvassing of the vote by mail ballots, those that are questionable, we cannot start that until the Thursday after Election Day.
Okay.
But what we can do, if a signature is missing, if a signature is mismatched, we contact that voter.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
And we get them to come in,
provide identification to cure their signature according to Florida law.
Okay. So when you put your ballot in, if they don't hear from you, you have to assume that everything's good.
Exactly. And they can track that ballot. They can know that we have it back at the office, voted. And a lot of times, many times voters call, well, how do I know my vote's been counted? But we don't start that process, like I said, until a week before.
Okay. Okay. You have to wait until the week before and then follow it. Make sure that it's counted for or not.
Exactly.
So, are there any changes with when you can register to vote? I know it's been 30 days out.
29 days before Election Day is the last day.
Okay. Still the same then.
Still the same.
Changed.
That hasn't changed.
Okay. Which is always good to know for anybody. If they want to switch parties, they're able to, as long as they switch the one they're going to vote for 29 days out.
That's correct. That's correct.
With our state being a closed primary state, still is, right?
Still is a closed primary.
So sometimes people want to change parties just so they can vote in election. Here in Martin County, for example, oftentimes there's nobody under the Democratic ticket. So if you want to vote, you're a Democrat, you may need to switch.
And another change with Senate Bill 90 affects candidates. If someone wants to run with no party affiliation and they're registered with either a major party or a minor party, they now fall under the same statute that candidates do. They can't change their party or can't change to no party after 365 days before qualifying begins. So that date already passed. It was April 21st.
So whatever you are, you're going to run under that party as a candidate. That's very,
for
very
this upcoming 2022 election cycle.
Okay. Will that change in the future, or that's just for this next?
That's statute.
Okay. It's statute. Okay. Perfect. There have been a lot of changes. So are you excited to see these, and you think they're good steps? Or
well, I can't really comment about my position because of several lawsuits that have been filed. So I can just share general information about what has
happened and
how it's going to affect our voters.
Well, it's important to know. And like you said, you were one of those people that didn't have the identification in the system necessary. So our own supervisor election, but it can happen.
Oh, sure.
And it's not always nefarious.
That's exactly right.
That's good to know. So again, people can go into the system, check to see if they're up to date.
Yes.
And that's it.
Actually, what they need to do is to call us to make sure. And our number is 772-288-5637.
Okay.
Call and make sure that we have either the last four digits of your social security number and or your Florida driver's license number or ID number.
Perfect. Eric Miller, thanks for tuning in. Eric's with Talk About Martin, and he is going to be in the studio next week with me. Of course, he does wonderful updates around the county. Vicki, he's wondering, when will Western Martin County receive early primary voting?
We're in discussion, Eric, regarding that topic in the office. I know that you also have a village election coming up, and sitting here today, I would say you're most likely going to have early voting for this primary election.
Oh, that's good news. That's good news. I'm sure, Eric, you like to hear that news as well. Alicia, just tuned in. May have missed this, but does Martin County use Dominion machines?
No, we do not. We have ES&S equipment, which is out of Omaha, Nebraska, Election Systems and Software.
Very good. Very good. So we have some elections coming up. You just mentioned Indiantown, and I think there's one other.
There's the city of Stuart, which is coming up on August 17th. The village of Indiantown will be on our ballot next year for the primary in 2022.
2022. Mm-hmm. So between now and then, we really have city of Stuart to look out for, and that's for a couple of the city commission seats.
It's just one seat.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And actually, Commissioner McDonald was in last week and said that it has something to do with, because it was a special election for when he filled that seat. It lasted a year, I believe. So something to that effect. So Eric says, awesome, great job. And he's very glad to hear it. So it's always good. How about nationally? Have you heard changes nationally that are, going to affect voters? There's always the argument, of course, about voter ID, which I'm so glad here in Florida.
Florida, we've had that for years. Well, there's HR 1 that's been before our Congress and congressional legislators.
The People's Act.
Yes, the People's Act, which I understand in reading news today that
you
it
need
did
to read
not pass in the Senate.
Yeah, it did not pass in the Senate. Okay,
Right.
I had not heard that. We had somebody from the Republican Executive Committee in last week speaking about HR 1. So sometimes it's, it's something you got to read yourself. It's not always what it sounds like by a title. So it's good to read through these things.
It's good nighttime reading. 900 pages. Yeah.
There's one of the larger bills we were talking about.
Huge.
So, and this is something, nationally, is Florida taking a spotlight as a national leader? I mean, I think personally it is as people, but how about with other states that are actually enacting legislation? Are they referring to the state of Florida? Hey, look what these guys have done.
Not to our association. They're not. But like I said in our opening, I really think that other states probably are looking at Florida law because it's worked in the past, and we have good timing in place as far as the process is concerned when we can start that tabulation of ballots. Early voting, so many states don't have early voting or as long as we have. Some states have longer than we have.
Right.
With it being a decentralized process, different states have different laws.
They certainly do. And that's something that we're keeping an eye on just nationally, because some of the states were counting votes. They couldn't start counting until the election closed, and then it took a week longer. They were accepting ballots. And that's where people were calling into voter integrity. And we don't have that here in Florida.
Right.
It truly was. There may have been pockets of issues, as there always are in any election. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, in Florida, I mean, we had our votes counted, tabulated for, and we knew election night who we were electing, with the exception of a few recall local races. But, it's just absolutely impressive.
I think in Martin County, we had our results out the fastest that we ever had, which was 7:38.
How was that possible? I was going to say, you're always so fast.
It was 7:38.
7:38.
Everything pushed out.
As many of you know, WPSL, WSTU, and Gigantic, Radio Gigantic, I'm not sure the call letters, they cover the elections on election night. And it's always amazing. It's always a kind of a joke in the studio because we cover St. Lucie County and Martin County. It's like, oh, it's Vicky, 705. WJNX. Thank you so much, Ray, behind the scenes here, letting me know the call letters on the other station. So
one other thing that affects our voters with the passage of Senate Bill 90 is the legislature in this bill added another individual that can return a voted ballot to the office.
Okay.
Or return it. In addition to returning a spouse's ballot, a parent's ballot, a child's ballot, a grandparent's ballot, a sibling's ballot, or a sibling spouse's ballot, a spouse's sibling's ballot, they added grandchild.
Okay.
So that's one part. But then the second part to that provision is a voter can only drop off 2 ballots in addition to a family member's ballot. So if someone were to drop off more than 2, like a friend or a neighbor's ballot, they would be committing a misdemeanor, first degree misdemeanor.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was another provision. Another provision that is also in the bill is, of course, we have to have our drop boxes, vote by mail drop boxes, manned at all times.
Okay.
And if that doesn't occur, supervisors of elections are subject to a personal $25,000 fine.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
you probably have the drop boxes locked during hours that somebody can't man it. I mean,
well,
somebody can't
they're
just, it's not like a
internal.
mailbox. They're
Yes.
internal. Okay.
And voters need to know too that when we have early voting in our libraries throughout the county, because that's where they're held outside of our office, we change those lock sets on the doors.
Okay.
So even the librarians, no one that works for the county can have access to those rooms during that block of time other than the poll worker and myself or my chief deputy. And those ballots are returned to the office every day.
Okay. Okay.
At the close of early voting, they come back into the office.
And they go into the vault and
they go into the vault.
And there they will wait until they are counted.
Yep.
So
until the signatures are verified.
Until the signatures are verified.
Yep. And then they go back in, they're sealed up in tubs. The seal numbers are recorded for chain of custody. They're verified by the canvassing board before we even begin that opening of the envelope and tabulation of the ballot.
Again, as you know, we've been speaking with Vicki Davis. She's Martin County Supervisor elections. And Vicki, you make it look so easy. We sit there and see how the voting is done here in Martin County. It's like, why can't they do this everywhere else? I don't know that, but it's too bad they can't replicate.
We're getting better in Florida.
So just a wild question out there. Do you think that voting will ever be online?
If it is, it will be a very long time before it's online.
Just too many issues.
Even for our military and overseas voters, they cannot return. We can fax them. We can email them a ballot, but they cannot email a voted ballot back to us. They either have to fax it or send it by mail.
Okay.
Just for security purposes.
It is. It's, you think you do a lot of things online nowadays, but there's always somebody that seems to be able to hack into a system at some point or another.
Yep.
So, and with our voting, it's our country. We're we're founded on our votes, and it's our right, but that's what makes us really special here. So, as we all know, there's been some hint of fraud and voter influence from outside countries into our election system. So it's convenient, but not plausible at this point.
True.
So.
Very true.
So, Vicki, again, August 17, that's the next election coming up for the City of Stuart. So, City of Stuart, you have one seat on the ballot.
Yep.
And we'll talk to both of those candidates. It is. But nonetheless, all that important.
Oh, for sure. Every election's important. Every ballot's important.
Every ballot is important. And, it's kind of nice to know that no matter what, we're going to have the elections. There's different things on the ballots every time. Sometimes they're long, but a short one's just as good too. It only takes you a second.
That's right. Absolutely.
So, and it's a city. And I always say sometimes, the election, the people that are local that control your legislation are the most important. So get out there and vote. Vicki Davis, Supervisor Elections, Martin County. Thanks for coming in to update us. Great updates.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you. Well, we are here back in the studio for the second half, and I hope you're all enjoying it. It's a little overcast and cloudy today, and we're going to get some badly needed rain again. Hope it's not too much for discharges, but we do need the rain. So it's a wonderful day, though, in Stewart. First half of the hour, as you heard, we had Vicki Davis, Supervisor of Elections, in, and she gave some really great updates from the Tallahassee legislation and what has changed in our election laws. And now I am so pleased to have in the studio Tom Campenny. He's, of course, a former City of Stewart commissioner, but more importantly now, he is the publisher of a publication that's become extremely popular called Friends and Neighbors. And Tom Campenny, he really is on the forefront of really all of the different governments that are running Martin County. That's the school board, where he goes out to Indiantown, Sewell's Point, the county, the city. I mean, Tom, I don't know how you do it. You just cover it all.
Well, to be honest with you, Casey, good morning.
Good morning.
But thank God that they have now decided to, I'm going to say the cast.
Right.
Not
always online.
Yeah. That way it makes it so much easier. The only municipality that doesn't do it is Ocean Breeze.
Okay.
And I guess because of their size, and everyone else does, which makes, I don't have to go physically to the meeting. I can do it later. But the reason I started this was, Commissioner, I wanted to give my constituents what was going on. Well, now it's grown. We have almost 23,000 emails. That
Wonderful.
And I just felt that people were not getting the information they needed from any other source. And I think this way they can get the information. And we've expanded it. Starting this week, we're going to have Jackie Hofelder come back, as she did with Luminaries many years ago. And she's going to have a piece on our email blast. We have lots of people writing for us now. David Hafner out in Indiantown just is beginning. We have Mike Meyer not writing as a city commissioner, but as a farmer, because they grow lots of crops in Martin County. And Merritt Matheson will be doing something on the water. Fishing. So we're trying to expand our list. And we have Joan Goodrich, even though I don't agree with her. We have Joan Goodrich writing for us once a month.
Wonderful.
So we are expanding what we cover and trying to give people alternate views so that they can understand what's going on.
And folks, again, it's Friends and Neighbors, and we're going to tell you how to get there if you're not already subscribed. But Tom, you mentioned a couple topics there that are sorely needed to be covered. It's tough right now to see a lot of local news in our local paper as it is. But on top of that, agriculture was one that it's always omitted. You just never hear about what's going on with agriculture, and it's such an important part of the economy. And so I'm glad to hear that you have contributors that can let us know what's going on in that community. It's very important.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think with David and Mike, we'll get a better picture, because that's a big part of our economy.
It is.
People don't even realize it. And if you want to maintain the open spaces out west, the only way we're going to do that is with an economy that has agriculture in it. Because if we don't, we're just going to have sprawl.
Right.
No matter what we do, we're going to have sprawl. The only way we can maintain it is by industries such as agriculture to have a viable way to keep that land in place.
Right.
And I don't know if you heard, but the Discovery Project down south on Bridge Road, that's going to be very high-end houses if it happens. The minimum lot is, I think they said $3 million for
a lot.
Not a big lot.
Is this waterfront?
A lot.
On
No.
Bridge Road? I don't think so.
No, it isn't. But they're building they intend to build a large community, and it won't be a community of people living there. These are like second, third, fourth, fifth homes.
Now, is this going in by the golf course that I
Yes,
think Michael
correct.
Jordan's?
Equestrian Center is now. They have that on that property now.
Okay.
But the reason I brought it up is not so much as that, as part of that is Becker Farms.
Okay.
And Becker Farms, as part of the deal, has said that acres as an agricultural trust forever. in other words, that's what we should be aiming for.
Right.
And I'm very excited. I hope that project does happen, because we can have homes like that, which will be just, let's face it, tax dollars for the county without services, because there won't be someone going to schools. There won't be someone calling on the ambulances very often, because they're not going to be there
Right.
very often.
Right.
And I doubt whether we have a lot of police presence. The sheriff will probably not have to go out there and break up fights. So I'm really, really happy. And I think we should all look at projects for what they bring to the community, not just say no or not just say yes, but look at same thing with Mr. Kiplinger's project out in Palm City.
Right.
That's a great project.
It used to be called Pineland Prairie. It's different now, and I keep forgetting what the new name is.
Oh, now you just knocked it out of my head too.
Sorry.
Newfields.
Newfields. Okay. So, but yes, it's another project that's coming to the forefront that's bringing
and it's going to bring
a lot of green space, but it's a
of
community
green space.
all in itself.
It's going to have 15,000 people if they build it out.
And that's something.
That's really amazing.
So, folks, again, we're speaking with Tom Campenny. He is the publisher and founder of Friends and Neighbors. This is a publication. It's grown a lot over the years. I watched you from the beginning, and now it's a huge Sunday read. It comes out every Sunday morning, and I wake up and have my coffee, and there is just a ton of different topics that you don't normally realize is happening out there, because you are listening to all the different various meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super good for people to understand what is happening in their community. Tom, do you charge for this publication?
No, there's no charge. All you have to do is sign up for it, and you get it. So far, I haven't found a way to monetize it, and I'm not going to charge subscribers.
That's awesome. So right now, you have contributors besides yourself.
Mm-hmm. No one is being
can
paid.
Subscribe. Nobody.
No one. I received no payment for the back office end of the publication, like the website, the emails going out, any of that. That's the editor, copy editor.
That's right.
Anybody. So no, it's a labor of love to the people of Martin County. You may not agree with me, but if you don't, like last week with the Costco in Stewart,
right.
we published pieces by both the developer and by the person that was against, and I think that was great.
I think that's the best way to present any type of topic, is to have the pro and
the con.
The con on
and
it,
let the
right.
people speak for themselves, and you judge.
You decide.
Right.
You decide. You're not there to decide for them. This is the information. Make your own decision.
Exactly. Kate.
Tom, how many hours a week do you spend on this?
Oh, well, I can't even imagine. It's a lot of hours, and I'm retired, so I have a little time to do it, but it's a lot of hours. But at some point, someone else will have to take over.
Hopefully not for a while, because Tom, honestly, people, Friends and Neighbors, if you go, they just type it in, Google it, you'll find it. You'll see Tom on the cover page. It's
friendsandneighbors.com.
Easy as that. But you will be amazed how much work and research goes into this paper every week. This isn't a monthly or quarterly publication.
Well,
it's weekly.
It's bi-weekly.
But it's bi-weekly. I thought that was every Sunday.
No, it just may seem that way.
Time flies, The older you get, the quicker it is.
It just seems that way.
But so, Tom, I'd love to hear, what are the hottest stories you're covering right now?
I think yesterday was a very important thing happened at the BOCC. They approved how to spend the ARP money.
Board of County Commissioners.
Board of County Commissioners. The ARP money is the American Recovery Plan.
Okay.
And we're getting something like $31 million over 2 years. And they really looked at it. And I'm going to say, we may think about it as COVID relief, but in actuality, the way the legislation is written by Congress, it really is an infrastructure bill. The majority of that money will probably go for infrastructure, the way it's been approved right now. And that could change, but a lot of that will go for sewer to septic.
Wonderful.
Septic to sewer.
Yes, that's even better.
And
good news.
And other programs in that ilk, though a good bulk of it will go to mental health. I think they'll try to fund the sheriff's program for mental health that way.
Yes.
I think they will. They're giving $3.2 million for food. There's using some of that money to train people for jobs. The United Way gets a piece to help nonprofits with their programs.
Okay.
But all in all, I think about 60% of it right now will be for infrastructure.
So Eric Miller, thanks for tuning in. He said, "What are your thoughts on the Indiantown Village Council wanting a slush fund?"
Well,
good question.
I think Eric is completely right. I don't know where that council, in my opinion, lost their way, but they have, I think, except for Susan Gibbs Thomas, they sort of have lost their way in why they wanted to be elected and what they wanted to accomplish.
It does seem that way, Tom. I agree.
It seems like it's about them and not about the people of Indiantown. And I'm not a person of Indiantown. I mean,
right.
But it just doesn't seem that they're using the resources of the taxpayers. And I think the average taxpayer, not FPL, which funds most of Indiantown, about 88%, I believe, pay about $200 to the village a year.
Right.
So if they each get the proposal by Councilman Dowling was for $2,000 per council member, so that they could put on events or put money, do this, do that. $1,000. That's a hell of a lot of $200 per household taxes. And maybe it won't pass. I hope it doesn't. But that's just an example. Why do they need funds?
Right.
I mean, they're a village of $6,700. So, that brings me to my other thing. I hope Eric got his answer, but that brings me to, in general, I think people stay in office way too long, local office, way too long, and I wish if the legislature preempts us for everything else, well, maybe they should preempt the terms of office,
right,
so that people don't make a career of it. And I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but in general, I think if you stay too long, you forget why you were there. It's supposed to be like serving on a nonprofit board. This is in New York. This is in Miami. This is local government.
Right.
And we need to have a way to have local people serve and then go away.
That's right. It is. And off topic here a little bit from friends and neighbors, but with elections, it's come down to what's the popular name. People, and that's how incumbents keep getting elected. People aren't looking at the issues, which Friends and Neighbors is bringing to the forefront. When you're covering these topics, people read this paper, you're going to understand how these votes impact you. And normally without a publication like yours, people don't realize what's been voted on. It's just all of a sudden that's law. Who voted on it? Who knows?
And nobody ever gets unelected. You have to do something really bad to be unelected.
Right. You do.
So I just think we need term limits in all offices. And I'd like to see. I don't think the local boards will ever really do it. Though Stewart just passed one for 12 years.
Right.
But the average commissioner stays 10.
Okay. Anyway,
that's just one of my top things that
Tom, I agree with you. Even up at the federal level, I wish there were term limits as well.
Me too.
So, a couple more comments. Eric, back to Indiantown taxes. $288,000 comes from rooftop taxes, and he says, "Good job, keep up the good work." He's all for term limits as well. Brent Wallenberg, septic to sewer is a fraud. Septic tanks with good calcium carbonate drain field take toxic ammonia and hydrochloric acid and make harmless calcium chloride salt.
I am not even going to go there because that's not my level of expertise. I will say, though, I think if the government is giving money away, and they are, in effect, they're giving us a lot of money.
They are.
Let's use it for something that is capital intense.
Right.
Where we know we are eventually going to get a return on our investment. So I think that's a good place to use it. I think roads would be a good place to use it. But again, you have to go within the structure.
Right.
And they have said, if I'm not mistaken, George Stokes, the deputy county administrator yesterday, or the assistant county administrator yesterday, said they have specifically said in the legislation that septic to sewer is a good use of that fund.
I couldn't agree more. I was going to say, for us here in Martin County and on the Treasure Coast, I think that's probably the number one use. If we could actually convert our septics to sewer systems up and down this waterway system, it would be wonderful. It'd almost be a miracle for us.
Yeah.
So
I'm not going to say what's better.
If government's given away, at least put it to good use.
Let's put it to good use and not waste it.
Absolutely. Now, Tom, you cover so many different areas. You just talked about the Board of County Commission meeting yesterday. Tell us some of the hot topics. What's going on here?
Let's talk about the school board.
Okay, perfect.
If people don't know it, there's a new CFO, Carter Morrison, and he is a great find. He has made it so much easier to follow things. He is so much more transparent. The board is becoming more transparent.
That's huge.
Because of him, because you can see where the money is going. And it was a little harder before. I still think they're very bureaucratic, but I think that he was a great hire. If I was going to talk, a couple of weeks ago, they rated Dr. Millay, the new superintendent, for the first time. I think they should have. They couldn't have waited because it was in his contract after 6 months. But I don't think it was a fair rating at this point,
right?
Because it's too soon, and he had COVID to deal with.
Right.
I'd like to see what would happen. Give him the whole school year without that.
Right.
And let's see how he does.
That's right.
He's reorganized many departments administratively, and I think that may be a good thing. If we're going to, the city of Stewart, of course, we have the Costco thing, and I think it'll probably end up passing. And again, I've always been a big proponent. If we're going to save Western Martin County and save our open spaces, what we really need to do is concentrate development within the cities and the CRAs. Because that's why they're there. Density should be where we have all the infrastructure already. If we build 400 houses in the middle of nowhere, well, we got to build roads. We need to have gas stations. We need Publix. We need schools. We need things that I don't think we should be in a hurry to do. Of course, people should be able to do what they want with their lives to a limit. But if we can provide housing and jobs within the CRAs and the cities, I think we save a lot of open land. We stop sprawl, and that's where it should be. I know people don't like change. We all don't. But at the end of the day, if we look at what's good for everybody, that's where development should occur.
And you're absolutely right. Change is just tough on anybody, whether it's good or bad. It's just tough when somebody has it. Tony Stevens, always good to see you tuning in from the UK. Foghat, Foghat, right? He helped found it. So love to hear it. So let's talk a little bit here, what you were just saying about the infill, basically, where there's cities and CRAs. Martin County has what's called an urban service boundary, just for that reason, right? So on this side of the urban service boundary, which is Stewart and Palm City, there's a line. And that's where you build. You have those services available to you in most of those places, and fire services, sewers, water, all that stuff. So that's kind of what's going on right now, even in the city of Stewart. And you talk about Costco, but there's a lot of different issues. We've talked about development, and I know you follow this with friends and neighbors, but this is that infill you're referring to. This is what it's set up to do. If it's an allowed use.
It's allowed use, we should have it. And I agree with Commissioner Hurd that we should not be moving the urban service boundary to accommodate new projects. At this point, at some point, we will have to move that boundary, but I probably won't be alive if we operate it within the framework of the comprehensive plan. There's years to go before we need to move the urban service boundary. But at the same time, you can't say no to all development within the urban service boundary. One of my pet peeves, Canna Highway. We've made that a 6-lane highway. Okay? As a 6-lane highway, and I see that we put on a Popeyes and we put on a Taco Bell and we on Canna. Now, to me, that's a waste of land. And what we have is land is a critical resource for Martin County. So we should not be wasting our land within the urban service boundary to put little projects like that. We should be creating larger projects so that when and if we ever have to go outside the urban service boundary, it is something that we do way into the future. But if we do, it doesn't matter whether it's house sprawl or business sprawl by having one-off projects. That still takes away our land. And all we have is our land at the end of the day. And we need to be good shepherds.
So you're saying our future planning needs to be carefully looked at, and let's not just rubber stamp any project that comes through. You have to see how it's going to impact us 30 years down the road when maybe we needed that land for several larger projects. And now we can't.
And I think the city of Stewart does a good job with that. There's really nothing else that does such a good job. I think Martin County, I think the commissioners need to start thinking that way so that we could conserve our properties. And again, if we're going to build, let's build something like Pineland Prairie or Newfields, where we get a big bang for our bucks and there's lots of open space and people can enjoy nature. Because if you enjoy Martin County, well, you're not going to enjoy it forever. And I'm going to say it, the Christ Fellowship houses, to me, are sprawl. And should have never been approved.
So those are a couple different examples there of being on the other side of the urban service boundary, where the Pineland Prairie, there was an exception to that rule.
Mm-hmm.
But as you're saying with the future land use, you looked at it and said they're saving a lot of the environmental areas. It was just a project. And Mr. Kiplinger went around the community and really explained to everybody what's going on.
3 years to go.
He did. He really did. He got a lot of community support behind him, which was very important. It was.
Excellent.
It was. Scott Watson, thanks for tuning in. He said private money should buy down development rights.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If it can be done in a systematic way. I mean, we just don't want by here, by there. We want it to be done in a systematic way. And I think, Scott, that would be a good program to start if we did it in a way that would really conserve land.
Right. I was just thinking here on the urban service boundary, there's one other example. Sometimes you have to look at them individually, and that's the fairgrounds. Don't even go there, right? It's a really large piece of property. I mean, right now they have, I think it's about 12 acres, if that, might be just under, right here in the city of Stewart.
I think the fairgrounds, what we really need to do with the fairgrounds is we need to have the county run the fairgrounds, run the fair. I'm not talking about in Stewart, I'm talking about out west, so that eventually it gets done. And we don't need to make a megaplex out of it. What we really need to do is have a fairgrounds. And then anybody else wants to use it during the year, the county can rent it out during the year. And it doesn't need to be that big. Maybe the county needs to do something else with it.
What do you think is going to happen to the land where the fairgrounds is? Because the county owns that, right?
Mm-hmm. I think the county, they probably won't let it go. It should be let go. I think it'd make a great industrial area, and I'd let the airport lease it back to the county. They don't even have to sell it. They can lease it back. The airport has done a tremendous job of bringing in businesses that contribute to us. So I'm going to say that's what should really happen to it.
Again, we're speaking with Tom Campenny. He is the publisher, founder, editor of Friends and Neighbors. Go to friendsandneighbors.com. You'll see
Friends and Neighbors in martincounty.com.
In martincounty.com. It's also on Facebook. You just type in Friends and Neighbors. A wonderful publication. You can subscribe to it. You'll get it. It's bi-weekly every Sunday. I thought it was weekly, but it's bi-weekly. The time flies. And there's just so much information in there, Tom. I thank you myself for providing that. It's a lot of topics that I wouldn't know about if I didn't read your paper, because I don't have the ability or time to listen to all the different meetings that you are. And it's incredible that you have taken this on. And I know you're saying it is a lot of work, but
yeah, it is. But Eric is doing a pretty nice job out in Indiantown. And I think we should appreciate other people who do.
I appreciate it. Eric's
work.
going to be on next week. Talk about Martin's does similar work as well, and it's wonderful. And these are just different avenues for just the everyday person to find out what's going on.
Right.
We absolutely, because we've lacked that
for a long
previously
time.
For a very long time. We've got just a minute left. So Tom, yes, I was going to say.
No, I'm just going to say thank you for having me on. This was really fun, and time flies.
Time does fly. And
Thanks.
Tom, I've known you for a long time. I think we had you back on in 2014 at the beginning of my show. We were talking about trains at the time, but and then many times since as commissioner about different topics in the city. And since you left the city, you've only grown. And now you're not just paying attention to the city, you're paying attention to the whole county. So wonderful friends and neighbors.
Thank you very much.
Well, appreciate all the information. And again, if you're in the county, go to friendsandneighbors.com and Friends and Neighbors Martin County.
Of Martin County.
martincounty.com and just all kinds of information. And I'm sure if you have something to contribute that you'll take that as well. I see you have like a letter to the editor section.
To the editor.
So put in your input and it's all welcome. So,
yes, it is. Thanks.
thank you, Tom Campenny. Have wonderful. And next week, we're going to have Eric Miller with Talk About Martin in the studio once more. And again, it'll be good information about Indiantown and more. Take care.